Welcome back to another episode of Make the Cut here. I am Oaks. This is Napo, presented by Wisconsin Sports Heroics. We are here with a very special guest today, the site president of Wisconsin Sports Heroics himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Robin Adams. Find him at Twitter on TheOtherAdams14. Very pleased and welcome to have you in here. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
We're doing well, and like I said, thanks for coming on to the show, and we've got a lot of stuff to get into today, so let's get into it. Obviously, we had that Bucks and Timberwolves game on Tuesday. Really huge win for the Bucks against, albeit the league's worst team. But what were your keys to success, and what were your takeaways from the game? And if you had a player of the game for the Bucks, who would that be?
Well, I think that the key for the Bucks in every game that they play is defending the three. Whenever they lose a game, that is the major reason why they give up a lot of three-point shots. And so the key to the game was that they limited first the amount of three-point attempts that the Timberwolves took, and then the ones that they took they were not making. So that kind of helped the Bucks' three-point defense, which is, I believe, the second worst in the league. So that three-point defense stepped up for once the other night. And so that was good to see, especially against the Timberwolves team with a lot of good shooters. That's one of the few good things that they boast are a few good shooters. Player of the game, you got to give it to Giannis. He was lights out as usual. He's shooting 75% from the free throw line this month, which is amazing considering how poorly he started out this season. That free throw percentage is steadily climbing, and now it is I'm not holding my breath anymore every time he goes to the line. I feel pretty confident in that, especially since teams have started to foul him a lot more.
Oh yeah, yep.
So
they have.
It was kind of reminiscent of the Hack-a-Shaq back in the early 2000s when Shaq was so dominant in the paint that they would just foul him because he was so bad at shooting free throws that they figured if he would hit one out of two, at least it wasn't two. And for a while, that's what was working with Giannis, but now he's starting to make these free throws.
Yeah, he's actually he is taking 10 a game in the month of February, which is I think that's it's got to be a career high for him on a per game basis, and he's making about 8 of them. So he's getting the points up there. Yeah,
I mean, like when you looked at his totals that night, I think it was 38 points, and like almost half of them came from the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really important for, his individual stats, the scoring averages, but just like margin of victory. If you look at the games that the Bucks lost earlier in the season, how many of them were determined by missed free throws?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they're not, we just got over this 5-game losing streak, but even during that losing streak, Giannis's free throws weren't the problem. So it's safe to say that now they're not losing games because of his free throws.
Which is definitely a good problem.
Oh, yeah. And Napo, like you said, over Twitter in the chat, I think Giannis, like you said, is shooting better from the line than LeBron. So
yeah,
anytime you're doing better than LeBron in something, that's always a positive, right?
Oh, 100%, definitely.
How about you, Napo? What were your keys to the victory? Who's your player of the game?
Yeah, so we definitely were correct with our prediction at our last episode. We said that the Bucks were favored by, I think, 11 points, and we said that it should have been a lot more. It should have been 20 plus, and they ended up winning by that. So I personally think that the key to that victory was just, it seemed like everything was just going right for them. I just think it was one of those games where they just felt good. They felt hot coming off of 2 good wins before that. I decided to take a different approach for my player of the game. Giannis he was obviously the best player on the court yesterday, but I decided to go with Bryn Forbes as my player of the game.
That's
he had 23 points off the bench in 25 minutes. That's a season high for him in points. He shot 55% from 3 on 9 attempts, 4 boards, 3 assists, second highest plus minus in the game behind Pat Connaughton. He just had an all-around fantastic game, definitely his best of the season. So I really hope that he can build on that as the season continues. And Oaks, I know that you actually were able to go to the game. So why don't you give us your side of that recap?
Yeah, I was able to go to the game. I'll tell you this, a lot different with 10% capacity for sure, obviously. It was a really cool thing to see Giannis, like I said to you guys in the chat, like every single time in the fourth quarter when we were scoring, Giannis was like full on going all out celebrating. Like I'm talking about jogging up and down the court, like waving his arms all around. Like you said, it was a night where everything seemed to go well for us and everybody was having fun on the team. And I guess that's what happens when you play the team with the worst record in the NBA. And like you said, Napo, I also had Bryn Forbes as the player of the game. Obviously, like Robin said, Giannis did a job, but I kind of expect Giannis to play really, really well. And lately, he's just been off the charts. I don't expect Bryn Forbes to put up 23 points and to hit 5 threes and to be, the second highest plus minus of the game. If he can give us something even close to that every game, that's going to be huge for our bench. And Robin, I don't know if you saw this, but there was people on Twitter and Napo that have been like calling for Forbes to be traded already. Like these are things that I've been seeing here and there. Like people are already kind of getting sick of him. And when he has a big game like this, it's obviously huge.
Well, Buck's Twitter is infamous for its overreacting to things. I mean, during the 5-game losing streak, I was seeing people saying, well, let's just blow this whole thing up and trade Giannis and start all over it.
Oh,
wow. Okay. Obviously, they don't remember the Jason Kidd days.
Apparently not.
Or Joe Prunty, or Larry Kristowiak, or Terry Stotts.
God.
Oh my gosh.
No problem.
I see trade stuff all the time on Twitter, and you gotta take it with a grain of salt, especially from Buck's Twitter, because I mean they'll trade anybody. But the thing is like they'll like, oh, we should trade DJ Wilson to Cleveland for Andre Drummond. Okay, so 1, salary doesn't work. 2, why would Cleveland do that?
Yeah.
Like,
they would never.
I see all these trades proposed on Twitter, and people are like, this would be a great trade. And even if they make the salaries work on their little trade simulators, it's like, okay, but why would the other team do that? Like,
right.
I don't understand. Like, I saw one that would work out. A player I really like is Vukovic down in Orlando, and you're like, we should trade Brook Lopez for Vukovic straight up. And I'm like, well, that would be great for the Bucks, but why would the Magic do that?
Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, like,
absolutely.
Just because you can make something work in a simulator doesn't mean you can make another front office use your Jedi mind control to make them do what you want. It's just not. It's silly. But I like the team we have. I do think that they're missing a couple of pieces. I think that there may be a trade. I don't know who it will involve, but I don't think it's going to involve Bryn Forbes or Chris Middleton, or definitely not Giannis.
Yeah.
But it could involve Brook Lopez and DJ Wilson, or even Dante DiVincenzo. But I wouldn't be surprised if a trade does not happen. And I do think that there's going to be a veteran or two added at the waiver deadline for the vet minimum.
because I know that we weren't allowed to sign anyone, right? Right now, because of where we are with the cap.
Correct. So as the season goes on, of course, that salary goes down because that's less money per game that they're going to play. So it's right around the waiver deadline that the Bucks will be able to afford a veteran for about the vet minimum. And there's a lot of speculation about who that might be. One of the things I see on Twitter every week is that Ersan Ilyasova is still in Milwaukee.
Working out.
Working out.
Yep.
Shooting hoops in the blizzard the other week. Out there, took a video of himself. So some people think that he's waiting for the call. Staying ready. But, there's a lot of players that are looking to be released or going to be waived pretty soon that could be a ring-chasing candidate for the Bucks. I think that they really could use another big man. But at the same time, none of the big men that are looking to be traded or released really excite me.
It's what we got. John Henson is a free agent. Bring him back to Milwaukee. I like.
Been there, done that.
I like Hassan Whiteside as a potential trade candidate. He's cheap. I don't know what the Bucks would have to give up for him, but I think he could be a nice piece off of the bench. But it really all comes down to what the Bucks can offer. We have no first-round picks to trade this year because of the stipend rule. So it's just second-round picks, and then you want to keep your main core intact. So what are you willing to give up for a player like Hassan Whiteside? The rebounds off the bench. He's got good defense. He's obviously not as good offensively as he once was, but it's their Bucks don't really have too many pieces that they can use to make a trade without getting worse. I would say, like, blowing up the bench if you want to get someone good.
Right.
Yeah. I completely agree. That's why I think it's going to be a free agent signing. If they add anybody.
Mm-hmm. And then we can move on.
You know who I don't want the Bucks to pick up is Blake Griffin.
I 100% agree. Blake Griffin is just Brook Lopez, but in a different jersey. And a little bit meaner. And Brook Lopez is pretty mean and intense. And Blake Griffin is just dirty. Like, I hate when he plays the Bucks. Yeah, like crotch shots and ridiculous. Tripping and just, I don't know, keep him as far away from our bench as possible.
I would maybe consider it if he wasn't making, 34 million, whatever it is. Maybe if he was making closer to what Brook Lopez is making, like 10 mil, I would consider it, but I don't know if he is the locker room guy that the Bucks.
No. Well, and the Bucks have a very strict rule. Like, that's what they've said in the media. Like, out in our locker room, and so like there were over the last offseason, there was a lot of speculation of whether Chris Paul was gonna come to Milwaukee, but they were pretty adamant that the answer on that was no, because as great of a player as he is. So, there was that rumored list that Giannis had of players that he wanted to play with. And there were a few names leaked on there, but apparently Chris Paul's name was nowhere near it because he just can't stand him.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Paul would have been kind of nice, former Clipper, actually, which leads us right into the next segment. We obviously have a Bucks game tonight on national television, finally. Even if it is because it's Zion, we're just going to act like it's not. But before we get to that game, Robin, I actually want to ask you about the Sunday game against the Clippers, which I think is definitely going to be a huge matchup just to see kind of like where we're at and see if this win streak is for real. But if you were a GM of an NBA team right now, and the league came to you and said you can either have the duo of Giannis and Chris Middleton or Paul George and Kawhi Leonard moving forward to lead your team as they are now, same age and everything, which duo are you choosing and why?
Well, I'm a little biased, but if I'm taking all biasness aside, I'm still going to go with Giannis and Middleton for a couple of reasons. One is that, Giannis is two-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. I feel like if you're going to be comparing the two roles that the four players all share, that Kawhi Leonard and Giannis are going to be the ones that pair up. And yeah, Giannis is just, I would say that he's better than Kawhi Leonard, which is interesting to say since Kawhi got the better of him in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago. But
Right.
I also feel like Chris Middleton is better than Paul George. And that's no knock to Paul George. I just think Chris Middleton is really, really good. He's been in a slump. I think that a lot of that has to do with play calling and usage, but he's still putting up, close to 26 and 6 on a 50, 40, 90 split. And the last guy to do that was Larry Bird. So
Yeah. Wow.
he's just really good. I also like, I feel like Giannis and Middleton are also healthier than Kawhi and Paul George overall.
Yep.
And so I feel like there's a little bit more of a reassurance that they'll be healthy more and in the long term there. Whereas Kawhi and Paul George have missed time here and there over the last couple of seasons for various injuries.
Napo?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with Robin. I would take Giannis and Chris over Paul George and Kawhi. I think Kawhi and Giannis is going to be a fantastic matchup. It usually is. I think because of that matchup, though, we need to see some of the other players on the team step up. Like, I envision it being Kawhi and Paul George against Giannis and Chris. So it's going to be a battle between the four of them, and who on the other two teams, who's going to step up for the Clippers, who's going to step up for the Bucks. The four of them are going to do what they do. They're going to put up points. They're going to defend each other. But there's going to come to a point where they're kind of just like a standstill. I think they're very close duos. I think they are probably both in the top three of what I would put my three top duos in the NBA. So I think it's going to be a very tough matchup for both teams, and I'm really excited to see which team comes out on top.
Yeah, I am also going to agree. And taking all my bias out of it, it was really, really tough for me to decide, to be honest, because I've been pretty consistent on saying that I think Kawhi is better than Giannis because of pretty much his shooting ability. With that said, I think a lot of things go into a duo, and like Robin mentioned, the duo in LA just has not been healthy. Like, if you look at the games missed already, Giannis and Middleton out of 32 games have missed one game combined, whereas Kawhi and Paul George have missed 17 out of their 30 games. I mean, it's just, they can't stay healthy. Everybody acts like Giannis has these meltdowns and Chris Middleton has these meltdowns, but I think people forget that like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have had the same kind of things happen to them themselves as well. Like, if you look back in like 2018 against the Jazz, Paul George was on the Thunder in game 5 or 6, I believe it was. Also, Westbrook puts up 46 and Paul George goes 2 of 16 from the floor with 5 points. Last year, Paul George has a terrible game 7. Kawhi Leonard has a pretty bad second half in the game 7. So it's not like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George are perfect. And like Robin said, I think obviously you would be comparing Giannis to Kawhi Leonard, Paul George to Chris Middleton. And I do like Chris Middleton over Paul George on a consistent basis to lead my team. So yeah, I'm going to go with that duo for sure. And I mean, I don't know. You can't go wrong with either one, but I would definitely take the Bucks duo. No question. But I know that, Robin, we didn't get to talk to you about this, obviously, because you weren't a guest on Tuesday's show, but how hot did you think Bud's seat was coming into Tuesday's game, and how hot do you think it is now?
Well, you know, that's another thing that is I kind of go back and forth on, because at the same, like, I always said before the season even started that the Bucks are going to be really slow to start out. It's going to take them a while to make these adjustments, and I said that I would give them 30 games before I was gonna make a hard opinion on it. And then, their 30th game, I think, was the win that snapped their 5-game losing streak. So I wasn't exactly feeling that great at the time of the 30th game. So in terms of how hot is Bud's seat, I think that it's pretty safe to say that he's going to be the coach of the Bucks for the remainder of the regular season, just because it's so late that making a change would seem almost counterproductive at this point. Bringing in someone new, even if it's an assistant on staff, a lot of people are throwing out Darvin Ham as the guy that they want to take the reins from Bud. I mean, that's a guy that's been in Bud's coaching tree for a long time, and right. I don't know how much different it's going to be. So, I think that for the remainder of the season, I think he'll be the coach. Just I know that, coaches have been fired after the season starts, and teams have still won championships. David Blatt was fired in Cleveland. Ty Lue comes in, wins a championship with LeBron and everything. But I think David Blatt was fired after only 5 games or something like that. It was super early in the season. Yeah. And I mean, we're getting to the point where Bud, if Bud is going to be fired, it's going to be at the All-Star break halfway through the season. And I just don't know of any team that has won a championship after firing their coach this late in the season. I mean, the Bucks have a realistic chance of coming out of the East. I mean, that even with their 5-game losing streak, they're only, I think, 2 games or less behind 76ers as the 1 seed. So, I mean, if the consistency is there and they figure it out, they have as good of a chance as any coming out of the East, even with Brooklyn being Brooklyn and everything like that. So if you figure you have a chance, I just don't feel like firing the coach this late in the season is the right move.
Yeah, Napa, has your position changed on that at all? Or are you still
yeah,
6 or 5?
Yeah, if the Bucks had lost to the Timberwolves, I think I would have maybe opened up a discussion to firing Bud, but like Robin said, we're 30 plus games into the season. Firing the coach is not the answer. If at that point you're essentially blowing it up. He's the nucleus of the team, and I cannot think of any better options right now, at least. So Bucks could be worse if Bud leaves. I would assume that they're going to be worse. An entire coaching change, basically at mid-season, I would not see that going well for any team, really. Maybe the only team that I could see would be whatever team has LeBron. Just because LeBron, when he is on a team, he is essentially also a coach as well.
Yep. Absolutely, but I mean, apparently we're in the minority because if, like Robin said, apparently if you look on Bucks Twitter, they're perfectly fine with letting go of Giannis and trading him and blowing it all up. So who knows?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I know a lot of people that I follow on Bucks Twitter, along with myself, were pretty ecstatic earlier in the week when we garnered follows from the Milwaukee Bucks Twitter account.
Yeah.
So that was pretty sweet. And then the other day, there was this mass outcry from Bucks Twitter that they got unfollowed by the Bucks, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. And I look at all their profiles, and it's hashtag fire Bud.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
Profile picture. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. No, Bucks Twitter, Packers Twitter, it's all craziness, you know. That's fan bases for you, though.
Twitter. It's Wisconsin sports Twitter in general. I mean, you guys might not be you guys probably aren't in the Wisconsin Badgers sports chat on our Wisconsin Sports Heroics page, but I am.
Nope.
And I don't always watch Badgers basketball or Badgers football, but I swear, even with some of our own writers, by reading their messages, I would think that the Badgers were losing like horribly. And I go check the score and they're up by 10.
Yep, classic fan of reactions.
Wisconsin sports. Well, it's what we do.
Yeah. Let's stick with football then, I guess, since we're talking about Badger football. Let's talk about Packers football, actually. So we ran a poll probably a few days ago asking what you guys thought the Packers should address position-wise, number one, and 45% of you guys said cornerback. Robin, I'll turn this to you. What position do you think should be the main focus, and what moves just in general do you think the Packers need to make in the offseason to continue the success that we've had in the past few seasons?
I think that cornerback is definitely a top priority. I mean, you got Kevin King not coming back, which is probably addition by subtraction, but that still means you have to replace your second starting cornerback. I don't know how comfortable I feel starting a rookie as the second starting cornerback. I definitely think that they'll address that position in the draft, but I do think that they should bring in another veteran corner for who's affordable. A name that I think is very intriguing for this is Xavier Rhodes, the former Viking corner who spent the year in Indianapolis. Did not have a very good year, but his old position coach in Minnesota was Jerry Gray, who's our position coach in the secondary now. And obviously he was a Pro Bowl corner with the Vikings with Jerry Gray as his coach. So I think that reuniting Xavier Rhodes and Jerry Gray would be great for both sides. And then after cornerback, I think that they have to address offensive line. We found out yesterday Corey Linsley is likely not to return. Mm-hmm. So we're out of starting center.
That's tough.
Silent G Jenkins can take over at center like he did when Linsley was hurt. And he certainly can play it well. But that means that you need to find his replacement at guard then too. And maybe it's John Runyon, who played well in his limited playing time last year. But in any case, we've cut Ricky Wagner. Corey Linsley's gone. David Bakhtiari is not going to be back until December from his knee injury. So I think that depth on the offensive line is definitely something that the Packers are going to need to take a look at.
Yeah, and you would agree that Aaron Jones is just gone, correct? Aaron Jones is gone.
Yeah.
Packers fans can move on emotionally from him.
Yeah, I got into it this morning with someone on Twitter about that, actually, who was like defending Aaron Jones's honor, and I said he's gone. It's okay.
It's time to move on. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Running back doesn't worry me as much though, just because we have AJ Dillon, and you can say like, okay, so he had the one game that he got all those snaps in, and yeah, so we had one good game. Are you going to base it off of that one good game? And I'm not, just because if you look at the few snaps he got over the course of the season, the yards per carry was very similar to what he got in that one game. Mm-hmm. So basically what you're coming in with is a guy who just got a really good dose of learning experience and came out of it healthy. And is going to come in as your RB1 in 2021. As far as backups go, I really would like them to bring back Jamal Williams because of two things. He does not fumble. I don't think he fumbled once this year.
I don't think he has a career fumble.
I don't think he had. Yeah, I don't think he's put the ball on the ground at all in his entire career. And he's a very good pass blocker. For those passing plays, he is exceptionally good. And he recently came out saying, I just put an article on the website this morning, that he wants to be a Packer for life. Now, of course, that's the same thing Aaron Jones said, and I'm emotionally moved on from Aaron Jones. So we know how much those words mean. Mm-hmm. But I still do think he is going to be a cheaper option than Aaron Jones, and I think that he could be very affordable. But I do think that it is a position that they should address in the draft as well, but not with one of their top picks. I mean, after all, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams themselves were both drafted by the Brewers the same year, and I believe they were 4th and 5th round picks.
Yes.
Or 3rd and 4th. I don't remember which, but they were not even day one draft picks.
Right. Napo?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Robin. I think, unfortunately, Aaron Jones is probably going to leave. I cannot see a world where the Packers give a running back that much money. I would not want them to. Even a franchise tag, I don't know how comfortable I would be with giving him the $8 million franchise tag, because then that's $8 million that you could spend on other positions of need. I think Jamal Williams should be back. I think he should be re-signed on a team-friendly deal. He wants to be back. You can see how much he loves being in Green Bay. He's such a great energy for the team, a great locker room guy. He's not only, as Robin said, he's a great pass blocker, he's never fumbled, but he's also a very good receiving back. I think a few years ago, he was actually a top 3 ranked receiving back by PFF. So him and Aaron Jones were like 2 and 3, and then I think Christian McCaffrey was 1. So having that change of pace guy there would be fantastic. In the draft, I could see them also addressing running back, as Robin said, if Williams isn't brought back. One guy that I saw falling in a mock draft that I did was Travis Etienne out of Clemson. He fell to the 3rd round, and I couldn't pass up on that talent. I really don't see him dropping all the way to the end of the 3rd, but you never really know how the draft is going to fall. I would like to see the Packers also address a cheap wide receiver in free agency, as Robin was talking about, bringing in a veteran cornerback. I don't know if I would want a wide receiver opposite Devontae as a rookie, but as we did see this year, I'm saying that, but we had so many rookie wide receivers just completely ball out this year. It was incredible. But I think the move that I would want the Packers to make the most would be to try and get Curtis Samuel. He's probably going to be a little bit expensive. If they could find a way to get him for cheaper, yes. I think a very sneaky free agent wide receiver signing that the Packers could get is Keelan Cole from Jacksonville. He's never missed a game in his 4 years, which is huge. The Packers tend to have injury issues at the wide receiver position. Having a guy who's healthy, he's never really been your number one guy, but next to Adams, I don't think you obviously don't have to be. He's put up decent stats with, you've seen the quarterbacks in Jacksonville. He's put up decent stats over the past 4 seasons, 40 receptions, 560 yards, 3 touchdowns on average. I would see that going up in Green Bay if he's brought in as a slot wide receiver, probably around like 650 and like 5'6", depending on what the transition is for next season. If the Packers go more pass heavy to run heavy, where how much do they trust AJ Dillon to be a workhorse? Because even Aaron Jones, he never got like 20 carries a game. he was also a decent punt returner in 2020. He didn't have too many returns, but he did have a 91-yard touchdown run. He averaged 15.6 yards per attempt on 9 attempts. We take out that the one long touchdown run. It's still 6.5, which is miles better than anything the Packers had this year. So I would like to see a wide receiver signing who could also be a return man, because Lord knows the Packers have struggled there over the pretty much as long as I can remember. Maybe since Randall Cobb was the return man. How are you feeling, Oaks?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. We definitely don't want to have to put back Tavon Austin back there, right? That was awful. We obviously have to address the defensive side of the ball. You know, every single year in the playoffs seems to be the same story. Our defense gets ran through. Aaron Rodgers tends to struggle in the second half of these playoff games, and we end up losing these playoff games. But I do want to throw out a hypothetical signing for Robin here. J.J. Watt, is there any way possible that we can end up with J.J. Watt? Do you think that's even a realistic possibility at this point? Or have you also emotionally moved on from J.J. Watt?
I was never emotionally invested in J.J. Watt, even though I've written about it extensively. Just the kind of player that he is, the career that he's had. You knew he's going to fetch a lot of money. Today on Twitter, it was reported that his top offer from an unnamed team is $15 to $16 million a year, which is way out of the Packers' price range. So what it comes down to for what the Packers' chances of getting J.J. Watt is, does J.J. Watt want to play for the Packers more than he wants to play for any other team? There's the home state, argument. He's from Wisconsin. Why not play for your childhood favorite team? There's that. I don't know how much that's really a thing with professional athletes, though, to be quite honest with you. But the thing also is that the Packers are perennially, at least the last 2 years, a Super Bowl contender, which he has not had a chance for a Super Bowl in many years in Houston. So the Packers do have that going for them in their chances of signing him. However, I just don't see it happening.
Right. No, I agree. I don't know how much I ever bought into the J.J. Watt extravaganza news either. Obviously, it'd be a really cool kind of like Cinderella story of a guy who has a great career in Houston and kind of like his time just runs out there and he kind of wears out his time there and comes to play for the hometown team. You mentioned, it comes down to, does he want to play for the Packers a lot more than any other team? I don't necessarily think that he does. I think, and I don't necessarily know that Green Bay is even the best fit for him, and I'm sure he knows that. I think Buffalo would be a good fit for him as well. They're a winning team. They're in the AFC East, a winnable division. They're already a really good defense. They'd be even more terrific on the defensive side with them. I kind of view that as kind of like a pipe dream at this point. I don't know how you feel about this, Napo, but Napo, if you had a pick of any free agent in this year's class, would it be J.J. Watt? Would it be Curtis Samuel?
Well, if I had anybody you could choose, a dream free agent, cap doesn't exist. It would not be J.J. Watt. I love JJ. I think he's been a fantastic player for the Texans. He's always been fun to watch. I'd love him on the Packers, obviously, but the way that it seemed early on when he was released that he was going to be getting maybe like 8 to 10 mil a year, and I would have been okay with that. But 16 mil, I'm out. Sorry. Like, I love you, JJ. Good luck where you're going, but I can't feasibly seeing him being offered that. But saying that, I'm going to a player who is going to get probably paid more than J.J. Watt this season. But because we are in a hypothetical world where cap does not exist, I would love to see Allen Robinson play for the Packers. I think Allen Robinson and Devontae Adams could have the potential to be the greatest wide receiver duo that the NFL's ever seen. That's two, I think, top 10 wide receivers on the same team. Allen Robinson has been putting up incredible stats with Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, and Nick Foles at quarterback. You give this man Aaron Rodgers and the best wide receiver in the NFL on the other side, we're going to see probably two 1,500-yard wide receivers on the same team. I don't think you could argue that would be the greatest pairing we've probably seen in the last, decade at least.
Oh, a decade at least, but you said NFL like ever. I was like, whoa. Chris Carter, Randy Moss.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. And they are getting
Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne.
Yeah, like, oh my goodness. Definitely in the last 10 years, I'll give you the last 10 years. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think. Yeah, Robin. How about you? One dream free agent.
One dream free agent. That's tough. I would bring back Corey Linsley, to be honest with you. That would be my dream free agent. If there's no cap exists, I'd bring back the all-pro center.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that when I was thinking about my dream free agent. But yeah, Corey Linsley definitely got to be up there. It's definitely got to be up there for that. What's your dream free agent, Oaks?
I am also going with wide receiver. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver, Chris Godwin. 2019, I think top 3 PFF wide receiver in the NFL that year. Injured a lot of this past year, but he's just a versatile wide receiver, inside, in the slot, outside. Wasn't playing with Tom Brady in 2019. Was playing with famous Jameis Winston. The opposing team's favorite quarterback, let's just say. And the guy just never drops balls. We've had a lot of issues, I would say, with dropped passes, whether it's Lazard or it's MVS or EQ. Just go up and down the list with all guys that aren't named Devontae Adams. And I don't think Tunyon has that issue, but just receivers that are either injured or dropping balls in big moments. And that's something that Godwin has not done over his career. Extremely talented guy. If he can stay healthy, I'd love to see him in Green Bay. It's not realistic. That's kind of the point of the question here, but he's going to definitely be offered way more than what we could pay him. But in the dream scenario, I'd love to see him on the team. I don't know that it'd be quite as dominant as anything we've seen in the last decade. I won't go that far. But it'd be something special to watch, and it's just another elite receiver that we could add to our core, So I think that would be excellent. But I do like Robin's pick of Linsley. I was thinking more like flash and skill position players, but can never go wrong with offensive line.
Agreed. I think
we saw in the Super Bowl what happens. Oh yeah, cannot go wrong with that. We saw in the Super Bowl what happens when your offensive line is terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get stomped.
And speaking of just Corey Linsley and the Packers' impending free agents, Robin, who would you like to bring back for the Packers? I know we had touched upon Jamal Williams, but other than Jamal Williams, we're back in a realistic world with the cap. Who do you think that the Packers should or will bring back going into our upcoming season?
Well, besides Jamal Williams and Corey Linsley, who I've already mentioned, I mean, the easy answer is Aaron Jones, but I'm just not really sold that he wants to play in Green Bay anymore. I mean, he was offered a top 5 contract for a running back and turned it down. So I'm just not sold that his heart and soul is in Green Bay anymore. So I'm gonna go with a very controversial pick.
Ooh, okay.
You gotta let me explain it. I would bring back Kevin King.
Ooh, okay.
but not as my starting cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I would bring back Kevin King. I would still go out and get Xavier Rhodes and say Rhodes is my starting, QB2 or CB2. But, the Packers are not deep at all at cornerback. I mean, after Kevin King, you had Chandler as your third your third cornerback, and he's not that good either. Then you had Josh Jackson, who is so bad he didn't dress after the Tampa Bay game. So in terms of, I'm just thinking of like depth, I would bring back Kevin King to be my third cornerback or my fourth cornerback off the bench. Mm-hmm. Perhaps he would be better in a different role where he is not being constantly picked on by Tom Brady. Limit his playing time, but also know that he understands the system a little bit better. I mean, I know we have a different system altogether, but he understands the players at least. And so I think that keeping a little bit of continuity on that defense would be beneficial. But that being said, I still stand by what I originally stated, that letting him go is addition by subtraction, except for this facet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I would like to see King back on a very team-friendly deal. I think a lot of people are only viewing his 2020 campaign based off of that Bucks game, where he had his worst game, I think, of his entire career that day. But for the majority of the season, he wasn't terrible. He only let up 1, maybe 2 touchdowns on the season, depending on where you're looking. It's just he got picked on a lot because when you have a lockdown corner like Jair on the other side, they're not going to go to him. They're going to go to the guy who is not as good. The only difference in Kevin King's season this year to the prior year was the interceptions. He was actually better in coverage this year than in 2019 when he had the 5 interceptions, I believe. So I would like to see King back. I do agree with you that he should not be CB2. I think he would be a very good CB3. Not in the slot. He's not fast enough, but bring me to the slot. I would also like to see Chan and Sullivan back on another team-friendly deal. He did struggle a lot, like you said, this year. In 2019, in his limited playtime, he was fantastic. I think he let up like 39% of the passes. But again, this year, he only allowed 28 yards per game, 2 touchdowns on the season. The completion percentage was a little bit high at 68%. But I think that a lot of that was transitioning from being a backup to a full-time starter. And as you said, Packers have no depth at cornerback because they're 2 of their top 3 guys are free agents this year in Kevin King and Shannon Sullivan. And do you trust Josh Jackson and Kadar Holman as CB1 or CB2 and CB3? I don't. I would like to see what Holman can do, but he's played, I don't know, maybe 30 snaps on the season, which I don't trust going in as my CB2. I'd like to see him in the slot. I think another secondary player that could be also brought back is Raven Green. I think he's kind of like a Micah Hyde type player for the Packers, but unfortunately he's been injured, I think, every season he's played on the Packers. So I think he would be cheap just based off that. And I think the Packers are a better team when he is on the field. He can play that sub linebacker package. He can play corner. He can play safety. I would like to see him back. We'll see if he could stay healthy, depending on what team he goes to. I'd also like to see, on the offensive side of the ball, Lazard and Tunyon. I would like to see both of them back. I think Tunyon needs to be signed long-term as soon as he can be, or some team is going to steal him. He had probably one of the biggest progressions I have ever seen for any player ever, going from maybe 100 yards and a touchdown in his career to, I believe he had 600, and then he had the 11 touchdowns. And then Lazard, he struggled with drops this year. I think he had as many as MVS in less games, but he still has a great rapport with Rodgers. I still think he's a good wide receiver. But you know, the Packers also aren't very deep in talent at the wide receiver position. I think Lazard would be a good 3-4 guy, with MVS being the 2 guy and then the 3 guy being the slot. And then if he's there at number 4, I'm happy with that. How are you feeling, Oaks? Who do you want to bring back?
Yeah, no, you guys pretty much covered it all. I agree for the most part on almost everybody. I soured on Kevin King after the playoff game. I think almost everybody did. I think it's easy to look at that game and overreact and say, oh, he's just awful. But like you mentioned, Napo, if you look at the numbers, he was actually a pretty decent cornerback. I don't think, like you guys have both said, that he is a CB2, but a CB3 or a 4. I do love the idea of Xavier Rhodes. I remember when he was actually a really, really good cornerback for the Vikings, and we would play him, and it was kind of like a Jair situation where you kind of try to avoid throwing over there because he was really good for a couple years and then had a down year but before moving on to Indy. But an important thing to remember, in my opinion, is that our corners are really, really young right now. Sullivan, Holman, you got, like you said, Raven Green, I believe, is kind of like a hybrid safety. He's young. They're all really, really young. And if you're looking at moving on from a Kevin King and those other guys that we talked about, you're probably looking at moving on through the draft, which means you're bringing in more young, inexperienced talent on a team that's trying to get to the Super Bowl every single year. So I'd rather see us, retain a lot of those guys on the defensive side of the ball, and hopefully they progress. And with a new defensive coordinator, everything's going to be different, hopefully. So we'll see what happens there. Robin, I know that you've kind of been a Mike Pettin defender over this past season. I know you were kind of a fan of at least not firing him mid-season.
Well, it's like I said with Coach Bud. I just don't see what firing a coach halfway through the season accomplishes. Especially in terms of a game like the NFL, where you're probably going to promote from within, which is what a lot of teams do anyway. But then you have to learn a whole new system in like a week. No thanks. But by the end of the season, by the playoff game really is what convinced me that moving on from Pettin was the right move. Like you said, I defended him all season, and I think for pretty good reason. I mean, if you look at the Packers' last 6 or 7 regular season games, and then also the first playoff game against the Rams, they allowed under 20 points per game. Like, it was just like the defense started off terribly. But in the second half of the season really turned it on. The problem though is that Mike Pettin failed to adjust in the biggest game of the year for the second straight year. And there's a lot of questions about where to play, how to play players, and things like that. Like there's no reason Kevin King should have been in that coverage at the end of the first half in that. But you gotta, we do need to say thanks, hey Mike Pettin, because I mean it was under his defensive strategy that Jair Alexander became Jair Island. Like let's just let's not pretend like Mike Pettin didn't have anything to do with that. I think that he's a good defensive coach. I just don't think that he was the right fit for Green Bay anymore.
Right. No, I agree. And just to finish up quickly to what you said, Nap, on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah, I mean, like we've mentioned already and discussed, I think Jones is definitely gone. You're offered top 5 running back money and you turn that down. Like Robin said, I don't think your heart is in Green Bay anymore. Williams, I think he's got to be back. His energy that he brings is crucial to the team. Like you said, Robin, great pass blocking running back. Great out of the backfield catching the ball. doesn't fumble. A.J. Dillon is a solid, whether he starts or as a backup, is solid as well. So I'm not really worried about the running back spot. Tonyan needs to be locked up as well. I think, like you said, Napo, I mean, we all know how many tight ends we've been through since Finley had to retire. It's just too many. I mean, we haven't been able to find a solid tight end since he was gone, and it's nice to have Tonyan now. And like you said, just amazing progression that we saw to him. But Robin, we want to thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a
thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Everybody, make sure you go follow him on Twitter at theotheradams14. Be sure to go over and check out Wisconsin Sports Heroics. Lots of articles. Robin, you cover what? At least the Packers, the Bucks, probably the Brewers, the Badgers.
Yep. I cover Packers, Bucks, Brewers are my big three, but I'll fill in for the Badgers or Marquette here and there if they need me to.
Gotcha. Yeah, make sure you go over there and check that out. And again, we thank you a lot for coming on.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great day.
You too.
You too.
All right.
See you, Robin.
See ya. All right. Well, we're gonna move right along, right? So.
Yep.
Sticking with Green Bay, obviously we started our segment of Aaron Rodgers' top 5 games of his career on Tuesday's episode. We're going to continue with that right now with number 3 and number 2. I've been looking forward to seeing what yours are going to be all day. Why don't you start with your number 3 game of Aaron Rodgers' career?
Yeah, before we get into it, I definitely want to say that this is probably my favorite segment so far that we've done.
Yeah.
Doing these countdowns. I'd also like to let everyone else know that once we finish Aaron Rodgers, we will be doing a poll for our next players and who our favorite top 5 games of them are. These could be past players. Hopefully you're not going too far back so we don't have to try and find some grainy footage of players. But
yeah.
But we want you guys to have a voice, so definitely vote on the polls to let us know who our next players that we are going to review. And getting right into it, my number 3 favorite Aaron Rodgers game is the divisional round, January 16th, 2016, against the Cardinals. I personally think this is the greatest playoff game I have ever seen Aaron Rodgers play. His stats weren't popping off the page as they normally do. He only had, I think, 2 touchdowns, and he was completing 55% of his passes, so not the greatest. But being able to do what he did with what he had available was incredible. No Jordy Nelson, no Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb got hurt early on. That's your top 3 guys gone. You cannot use them against one of the league's best pass defense. His top 3 wide receivers that year, James Jones, Jared Abbrederis, and Jeff Janis. Those were the top 3 wide receivers for that divisional round playoff game. And he still kept them competitive. And I'm going to take you back in time to that final drive that is the greatest drive I have ever seen.
Excuse me.
2 timeouts, or 2 minutes left, 0 timeouts. He gets sacked, resulting in the Packers going to their own 4-yard line with a minute left in the game. Boom. Bomb to Jeff Janis. He's double covered by the Cardinals. Rodgers finds him anyway. Janis finds that hole. Incredible. 36 yards left, 21 seconds. Uh-oh. Penalty on Richard Rodgers. They move back 5 yards. 5 seconds left. Heavy pressure. Rodgers rolls to the left, throws off his back foot. This is probably the craziest throw I have ever seen. He's falling backwards. No feet on the ground. Touchdown. Hail Mary to Jeff Janis. It was ridiculous. I think the only other player that I have ever seen play football who could replicate that is Pat Mahomes. And I think he was very close to doing that in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for Mahomes, his receivers could not corral those ridiculous throws. But
those
then,
were insane.
just like in classic Packers fashions, we got a heartbreak in overtime. That's 3. Every single overtime game the Packers have gone in the Rodgers era in the playoffs has been a heartbreaking loss. The Cardinals scored in 3 plays. 75-yard pass to a wide open Larry Fitzgerald who runs through like the entire defense, gets dropped at like the 5-yard line, incomplete pass. I thought the Packers were going to hold them after that, and then a shuttle pass for the touchdown. That was. I thought they would have done it. I really wished that McCarthy had went for 2 at that point. You're down your 3 best wide receivers. I believe Jordy was out the entire season, so Rodgers didn't have him anyway. But Adams and Cobb both gone. You probably aren't going to win in overtime. Go for 2. Put it all on the line when you have that momentum off of that ridiculous throw and catch.
Right.
But even if the Packers had won that, I don't think they would have been able to go into Carolina and beat MVP Cam Newton that year. The Cardinals got absolutely torched that game. I think the Packers probably would have gotten torched. But it would have been nice to have seen Rodgers win a 1 overtime game in the playoffs.
Yeah, and to touch on the possibility of how that Panthers game would have went, if you remember, we played them earlier in the season, and we played them close. It actually came down to a Rodgers missing a wide-open Randall Cobb, I believe, in the end zone. So you never know. That game that you were talking about against the Cardinals was on my birthday. That was heartbreaking.
Oh, man.
Just awful way to end the birthday for sure. My number 3 is not so heartbreaking. It's actually one of the better statistical games you'll probably ever see. Let me take you to Packers versus Texans, October 14th, 2012, where we come into this game at 2-3. The Texans are undefeated at 5-0. I mean, this is so long ago. We're talking about Matt Schaub and Arian Foster era. So this is vintage, old-time Aaron Rodgers.
Andre Johnson,
Texans,
too.
Andre Johnson, Arian Foster, Brian Cushing on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, man.
And the Texans had the 9th best defense in the league, so it's not like we're going up against, any poo-poo defense. Sunday night prime time, like I said, we were 2-3. Aaron Rodgers puts on a crazy performance. 24 of 37, 338 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, one of 2 6-touchdown game performances, which may or may not be in the top 5 here again, and 133.8 passer rating. Just crazy numbers that really only Rodgers and maybe Mahomes can put up. Just absolutely insane numbers. Texans did eventually. The game was not necessarily a blowout right away. It was 28-17. Then Rodgers goes on one of those crazy quick drives. We score 2 touchdowns in less than 3 minutes. Just absolutely insane stuff. And a game where Rodgers had almost no help from the running game. Our rushing game averaged like under 3 yards per carry. Just a crazy, crazy performance by Rodgers. Anytime a quarterback puts up 6 touchdowns, everything's going right for you. Another game where he completes a pass to like 7 or 8 different receivers. Jordy Nelson has a ginormous game. When Rodgers had huge games, it was normally Jordy Nelson who was the receiver that was catching all those balls. Mm-hmm. And I just had to put it in there. There's a lot of them. I thought of the Cardinals one, but I don't know.
It wasn't a happy ending
because I didn't want to put that in there because it wasn't a happy ending, and yeah. So that's my number 3. Let's go to number 2.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Aaron Rodgers tied the Packers franchise record with 6 touchdowns in that game with Matt Flynn, the GOAT, who set the record week 17 that previous season. So I think he had a little bit of a fire lit under him because people were making fun of him because he didn't hold the record for most touchdowns in the game for the Packers.
The GOAT, Matt Flynn, got a huge contract off that one game too. That's
3 years, $24 million. Never played. Never started. He got paid $8 million to just sit on the bench and watch football. That's the life.
Yeah, got beat out by Wisconsin's own Wisconsin Badgers, Russell Wilson, yeah.
All right, and coming in at number 2, we have Mani. Come back against the Bears, Sunday Night Football, Week 1, September 9th, 2018. This was definitely tough for me to decide whether I wanted to put this 1 or 2. I have obviously put it number 2, and you guys will find out why it's 2 just based off of my number 1 game and how I explain it. But we look at what happened to Rodgers in that game. He sprains his MCL and fractures his tibia all on the same play. That's an injury that put J.J. Watt on IR. It's the exact same injury. So for those that don't know, a fracture isn't just like a crack. A fracture is defined as a break in the bone. So he has a broken bone in his leg, and he comes out. The score is 20-0 before he gets the ball in the second half. He had 13 passing yards in the first half. He had 15 rushing yards. He had more rushing yards than passing yards in that first half. He took 2 sacks, one of those sacks being the one that injured him. And yet, he still finished with 286 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 273 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half, and one incredible comeback. On one leg, this man comes back at halftime, scores 24 straight points against the league's best defense. 4 straight scoring drives to take the lead. 3 touchdown drives on there. The only time they did not score in the second half was when they were running the clock out, and they were doing some cheese against the Bears. I will admit that. They were doing the old let's get the delay a game to keep the clock running, and we'll just keep
the Bill Belichick method. Yeah.
I believe that was the last year that was allowed. I don't think that 2019 that was allowed anymore, because you can get a delay a game, I think 2 or 3 times in a row, and there's no penalty. Or like you get the penalty, but I think you get like a 15-yard penalty or something. Was like it's unsportsmanlike to take the same penalty like 2 or 3 times in a row.
Yeah,
and I think they took 2, and then I think Rodgers snapped it, and he just ran around in the backfield for the last 10 seconds of the game, and then just chucked the ball up deep to Devontae, and it obviously fell incomplete because I'm pretty sure he just straight out of the end zone. Just you don't want it. Give him any chance. But I think that was probably one of the most incredible just quarterback moments at all. Like I think the only other moment that I can think of off the top of my head that it comes close to that is it was just Carson Wentz's year when he was up for MVP consideration, the game that he tore his ACL. He finished out a drive with a torn ACL and threw a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
That's the only other game that I think comes close to that. I'm sure we've definitely seen a bunch of Brett Favre games. I think he played a game where he broke his thumb, went back in. Oh, no, there was one. There was a Brett Favre game where he doesn't remember throwing a touchdown. Maybe we'll get to talk about that one if we do a Brett Favre top 5 games, but I'm going to save that one.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite stories. He doesn't remember throwing a touchdown.
Yeah, no, but Favre is crazy.
Let's go to you. Let's find out your number 2 game.
All right, I had to put this one in there. November 4th, 2014, Packers Bears Sunday Night Football, I believe it was. Aaron Rodgers throws 6 first half touchdowns. 6 first half touchdowns. I don't care how bad the defense was, which it was bad that year, second to worst in the league. I don't care how bad it is. You throw 6 first half touchdowns. That is an amazing performance. And 18 passes. So 33% of his completions were touchdowns. And another game that Jordy Nelson was just absolutely crazy. 6 catches, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. Completed a pass to 8 different receivers like always. And the crazy thing about it is he could have easily probably shattered the record for most single-game touchdown passes which is 7, which has been hit 7 different times. He probably could have had 9 or 10 if he tried. He only was in the game for 3 drives in the second half. All right, well, before we move on to our last segment, our Make the Cut segment, of course, voted by you guys, the listeners on Twitter, do want to give a shout out and acknowledge and congratulate our quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, on his engagement, man, to Shailene Woodley. I believe I'm saying that right.
So, yes.
Pretty crazy news that nobody knew what was going on. Credit to them, I guess, for being able to keep that private. How you keep that private when you're 2 big celebrities in your field and everything, being able to keep that, on the down low from everybody is impressive.
Mm-hmm. It was, they met over the pandemic, so I'm curious to see how that even happened. But I don't know if you saw any of Shailene's interview, but it was very funny because she knows Rodgers as a person, the guy who's a nerd, the guy who wants to host Jeopardy. She doesn't know him as MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Right. And I think my favorite quote that she said was, I never thought that I would be getting married to a guy who threw balls for a living. That's hilarious. And I wish them the best in the world. I cannot wait to see the wedding photos. I am very excited for them.
Yeah, 100% echo everything that you said. And I also thought that quote was hilarious as well. Just like you said, it's always crazy to think not everybody is into sports as we are and as a lot of people are. And it's not always, a big part of what they do and what they watch and everything. So I think that's kind of unique that she knows him as somebody outside of sports. And like you said, as the nerd that he is that wants to host Jeopardy. So like you said, we here at Make the Cut wish him nothing but the best. And hopefully, years and years and years of happiness. And I'm sure the wedding photos will definitely come out in the future. But let's wrap the show up with our last segment, Make the Cut here. Voted by you guys, the fans. Make sure you do head over to our Twitter account at MTC Oaks Napo every single day, because that's when after every single episode, we do put up that next poll there that runs up until we record for that Make the Cut segment. So you guys did vote on the NBA MVP rankings. I believe it was 35% of you. The MJ and LeBron GOAT debate was close. For a long time, it was tied. And but ultimately, you did choose the NBA MVP ranking. So I will let you start, and I will go after. Do you want to do this 1-1 or?
I think we can just list them. We'll give reasons why we have them where they are. Yeah. So I'm going to start with number 5. So just to let all of the listeners know that we are just doing a top 5 rankings. I know a bunch of other sites do top 10. We're just going to keep it at our top 5 MVPs. Coming in at number 5 for me is Damian Lillard. He has been incredible this season. He's averaging 30 points, 8 assists, and 4.5 rebounds. Yes, having CJ McCollum help be there helps a lot for him because CJ has all-star caliber potential, but he's only played 13 games, and CJ hasn't played since January 16th, so he's missed 18 games. The team is 10-8 without CJ, and they also posted a 6-game win streak over those 18 games, and the Blazers are still the 5th seed, so they are still right in the middle of the playoff race. Lillard was putting up insane numbers, or it still is, during the 18 games without CJ. He's been putting up 31 points, 9 assists, and 4 rebounds. He is doing it all for the Trailblazers, and he's my favorite point guard and one of my favorite players in the league to watch. I just think he is an incredible player, and if you ever want to watch a highlight reel, I would suggest watching Damian Lillard. The shots this man takes are incredible.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 4 is our boy Gianna Santerkumpo. I was playing between putting him 3, but I think my number 3 guy just has a slight edge just based off of shooting splits. But Giannis has been incredible this year. He started out pretty slow at the beginning of the season. He did struggle, especially from the free throw line, but as we've all seen, he's slowly been climbing up the MVP leaderboard, and he has cracked a bunch of people's top 3 now. But Giannis is averaging 28.5 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists on 57% from the field. He has now been incredible in February. He's shooting 75% from the free throw line, whereas his season free throw percentage is at 66%. So that is leagues higher than what it was before. We can now trust him to take those shots from the free throw line. What's more incredible is that we had talked about this earlier, but on 10 attempts, he is making 75% of them, and that is quite a lot. Over February, 30, 12, 6, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks. I think he's putting himself back into that MVP conversation, as well as Defensive Player of the Year again. Coming in at number 3, this was a toss-up, but I had to give it to another big man right here, Nicole Yokic. The things this man does is ridiculous. 27 points, 11 rebounds, 8.5 assists, nearly 50-40-90 as a center. He's 56% from the field, 41% from 3, and 87.5 from the line. That is ridiculous. Yes, the Nuggets have definitely cooled off from their 5-game win streak, and they're 6-6 since then, and they've fallen down. I believe they're the 7 seed now, 6 or 7 seed. But, I can't put that on Jokic. He's been incredible. Like, the man is averaging a near 27 triple-double as a center. That's incredible. He leads the league in PER at 31.1, and he's second in the league in triple-doubles with 7. Number 1 is Russell Westbrook with 8. So Jokic is only 1 behind him. My number 2 guy, I did not like putting him here because of the rivalry we have with them, but he has been playing out of his mind this season. Joel Embiid, I have him at number 2. You got to put him up there in the top 3 conversations. He's the best player on the team with the best record in the East. I don't know if they are the best team in the East. I think the Nets are also in that conversation. But as of now, the 76ers do have the best record, and I think you do have to have their best player on that list. And he's earned his right to be in that conversation at 30 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. Just like Jokic, he's close to averaging 50-40-90, 54% field goal percentage, 40% from 3, 85 from the line. That is ridiculous, again, for a center. The center play from these two has been incredible. Like, I never thought I would see 2 centers almost be averaging 30-point triple-doubles on 50-40, or, well, I guess Embiid's not a triple-double, but centers averaging 50-40-90 splits. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yep.
And number 1, I believe that the team that this man is on would be probably one of the worst in the league without him, Steph Curry. I really don't think right now, I don't think there's really too much of a debate as to why he would not be top 2 in the MVP conversation. He is literally the definition of most valuable player. Without him, the Warriors would not be in the playoffs. They would be probably almost as bad as the Timberwolves and the Pistons right now. Yes, I do enjoy Wiggins. I think Wiggins is a good player. I think he gets a lot of hate because he does have that big contract that, he hasn't really quite earned yet, but he's a good player. He's averaging 17.5, but he's a better third option. Steph has no real number 2 option next to him since Klay got hurt. And the Warriors are Steph Curry. They rise with Curry and they fall with him. If Curry struggles, they are probably not going to win that game. If he plays very well, they still may not win that game. I would liken it to how Aaron Rodgers has been with the Packers in the past. Like, when Rodgers has struggled, the Packers do not win games.
Yeah.
When he plays very well, they still may not win games because the rest of the team hasn't always been up to par. The Warriors do not have a good team around Steph. I enjoy their players. I think Draymond is a very good defender. I think he's very solid, but he's not going to help take that offensive load off of Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Steph is averaging 30 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds on almost 50-40-90. The man is a cheat code. He puts up video game numbers nearly every year, especially efficiency-wise. He's shooting 48% from the field, 42% from three, and 94% from the line. When your worst shooting percentage is field goal, and you're shooting that well from the other two aspects, you're doing something right. Like, he doesn't really drive to the rim. He's not really that guy. He's that guy who can take a 3-point shot from anywhere. I think that if Curry keeps playing the way he is, that there should not be a debate that he is the most valuable player. If the Warriors rise to even the 4th seed and they make the playoffs, you have to give it to him. He is full on going LeBron James on the Cavs, on like his last few years on the Cavs, just pulling this team of role players to the playoffs. I think Steph has to be one now. I think he'll probably be one by the end of the season, unless Giannis keeps going on this tear that he's having, because he has been incredible. I think Giannis could keep crawling up that leaderboard, but as of now, Steph Curry, and he is my MVP prediction for the rest of this season. All right, now after I just talked for a while, Oaks, I want to hear your top 5.
Our top 5s don't differ all that much, but you'll see, maybe be surprised actually who I left out of there. But number 5, I've got, like you said, our guy Gianna Santerkumpo. Just what can you say about him? The complete focus offensively for the Bucks. The defense knows he's the focus for the offense. He still puts up insane numbers. 28.6 points per game, over 11 rebounds, 6 assists. The Bucks are now on a 3-game win streak, albeit versus, a few kind of lower level teams, bottom of the barrel teams. 5th in the NBA in plus minus, which every single year he's always up there. When he's on the floor, the Bucks offensively are a machine, usually top 3 offensively. He leaves, kind of plummets, but yes, you can attribute that to the fact that similarly to LeBron, when you build an offense around one player, obviously when that player is not on the court, the stats are going to diminish, but nonetheless, he does just eons for your offense. Just his plus minus, like I said, plus 73 combined over the last 3 games, which by far leads the Bucks. When he's on the floor, we're just destroying teams these last few games. When he's off the floor, it's a totally different story. 3rd in the NBA in PER, player efficiency rating, which year by year he's always top 3. He's been up there with the likes of Anthony Davis and LeBron every year, and almost is always leading it, especially the last 2 years. And
yeah, he set the NBA record last year when he won MVP.
Yeah, which was it Kareem or Wilt who had the record before?
Ooh, I don't remember. It wouldn't surprise me if it was either of them, though.
Yeah, my gut tells me it was Wilt, but nonetheless, like I said, these last few games, the reason why, because it is kind of like a weekly ranking thing for me at least. This last week has been outstanding. He had the one game where he had 38 points, 19 and 24 from the free throw line. Being able to make at his size, you're going to go to the free throw line a lot of times, especially with as much as he drives. You've got to be able to hit those. It's huge for the offense. Being able to hit 19 out of 24 that game, hit 10 out of 13 the game on Tuesday night. I believe that's up there in the 78% range, which is above league average, especially for his position when he's basically a power forward or a center, really. He used to be listed as a 3. He's pretty much a center, with pretty much kind of how they've kind of play him at certain times. But get into the line that often for the offense does wonders. The guy is just outstanding, does everything for the Bucks. So number 5, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 4, Damian Lillard, Dame Dalla, the best rapper in the NBA. 4-Bar Friday creator, all that good stuff. Like you said, similarly to you, my favorite point guard to watch in the NBA. Some of my favorite games in the bubble were his performances. What he did in those 8 games, I think it was, to get to that play-in tournament, just insane. I was like jumping off the couch, like just going nuts. The game against Brooklyn, the game that he had 60, like just all these games, he's just absolutely insane. This year is no different. Like he picked up. Whereas Jamal Murray kind of had like that amazing bubble and has kind of been average. He's been good as of late. Dame Dalla has not had that problem. Damian Lillard has not had that issue. Averaging close to 30 a game on 8 assists per game, 38% from 3, not quite up where Steph Curry is, but really, really close, 93% from the line. Blazers are 5th in the West, which, like you said, when CJ McCollum's only played 13 games, and their starting center, Yusuf Nurkic, who was borderline all-star material, has also only played 12 games.
Oh,
and
wow.
You've got that team in the 5 spot in the West, 5 games above 500. That is something that cannot be, overstated. Like, that is so impressive. For a guard, being 9th in the NBA and plus minus is insane. He has the highest PER of all guards in the league right now, above Luka, which was surprising because Luka I consider to be a pretty efficient player, not from 3 necessarily, but literally everywhere else.
Yes.
And like I said, he had a 44-point game against the Bulls, so he's just been super consistent, the model of consistency. He's improved every year. His 3-point percentage has improved. He used to be in the lower 30s. Now he's in the upper 30s. So number 4, Damian Lillard. Number 3, I couldn't leave LeBron James off the list.
Okay.
couldn't leave him off the list.
Respect, yeah.
Yeah, you could argue that he could be 4 or 5, especially because of recently, but I'm going to tell you why he's still number 3, because I would challenge anybody to tell me that he wasn't in the top 2 or 3 already before the 4-game losing streak. So the numbers he was putting up before AD was gone, 27, 8, and 8. He was shooting his career best since like 2013, which was his 2nd straight MVP season in Miami, 40% from the 3-point line. Free throws just dip every year. We're not, free throws aside, but even still, 25.5 points a game, still 8 rebounds, still 8 assists, 1st in the NBA in plus minus. So that right there tells you everything you need to know. When he's on the court, his team is fantastic. When he's off the court, they don't know how to play basketball anymore. They can't stop anybody. They can't score.
Every year.
Yeah, every single LeBron James team, yes. And it's just the story of his career. PER has dipped to 24th. That's not very good, but I would argue that with his supporting cast, with AD out and everything, efficiency isn't always the number one objective and the number one priority for a guy that's just trying to get through the regular season and keep him at a top seed to keep home court advantage. And yeah, they've lost 4 straight, but they have lost 2 games against Brooklyn and other good teams, and they're still 3rd in the West, which is why I had to leave another guy out of here. But one thing that I will say that I think will catch a lot of people by surprise is that, contrary to what the national media will tell you and what other people will say, is that LeBron is still a great defender when he tries. And he's been trying a lot lately, especially since the beginning of last season. What if I told you that he is 2nd in the NBA in defensive win shares? 2nd, behind Rudy Gobert, who is widely known as one of the greatest interior defenders that we've seen of the past decade, probably. I mean, the guy is just insane. On defense, even, he's still right up there at the top in every single metric and statistic you can think of. And at age 36, I mean, what else can you ask of the guy? Age 18 season, 18 years in the league. Oof, outstanding. I don't think anybody's going to say that AD is not important, but take LeBron James off that team, and that Lakers team are the New Orleans Pelicans of 2017-18 when DeMarcus Cousins was out and they had Rondo and Holiday. That's who they are. They barely miss the playoffs or they get bounced in the first round. So number 3, LeBron James. Number 2, like you said, absolutely just killing the league right now, Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. You could argue he's the most improved player of the year, too. You really could. Like, if you look at his stats from last year, I've got a few things written down here. I mean, he's just up in every single thing. Just 7 more points per game. 7. For a guy that was already up in the higher end of centers. 7% better from 3 in one season. 5% better from the free throw line. He shoots almost 86% for a center, which is
ridiculous.
Jokic is at 87%. He's right there at 86, averaging 30, 11, and 3. Not a triple-double, but still 3 assists is right around where AD is, so it's not bad.
I mean, that's good for centers. Jokic is just a freak of nature when it comes to playmaking.
Jokic is on another level passing the ball, yeah. Probably right up there with... I'd say Mark and Pau Gasol were good passers. Jokic makes them look like average passers. I mean, he's outstanding, but 7th in the NBA for Embiid in plus-minus. Another guy, like you said, close to averaging 50, 40, 90 for a center.
Ridiculous.
Not a guard, not a forward, a center. And we saw how close Chris Middleton was to getting it last year. I think he missed out by just this much. But
0.002%.
So even smaller than that much. Like, it's so hard to do it. It's so hard. And we've got 2 centers. So in today's NBA, I mean, it's insane. And the improvement that we've seen out of Embiid. Sixers are best in the East right now, like you said, top seed. I would put Brooklyn over them from a talent perspective. Wouldn't surprise me to see Philly beat them in a playoff series, though, obviously, because they have depth and they have defensively they're really, really good. So,
oh yeah.
Rounding out my top 5 is Steph Curry. Okay, which means I left out Embiid, who would be number 6, by the way. If I went to 6, he'd be number 6. Either him or Donovan Mitchell. Number 1, Steph Curry. I don't even have to look at notes for this. I don't know what else to say about the guy. Like you said, video game numbers. I said Dame is my favorite to watch. Steph Curry is right there. Like I find myself just as much as I'm jumping off the couch for Dame, just as much for Steph Curry. The guy, the shots he makes me want to go to the Y and shoot these unbelievable shots I know I'll never make, but it's just inspirational. You know what I mean? I don't know what else you can say about the guy. Just inspired an entire generation of players, completely changed how the game is played today. 30 points per game. Every single game he's doing this pretty much, 30 or above. 5.5 rebounds for a guy his size. 6'3" with basketball shoes on is really impressive. 6 assists per game doesn't jump out at you, but the guy's putting up 30. You know, and he is the main focus on the offense. And like you, I like Wiggins from a talent perspective, but I don't know what he's got inside of him. Inside his heart right there, I don't know if it's there, you know. 17.5 points per game from Wiggins. That's the next highest score that Curry has. Curry is that offense. Everything revolves around him. Curry goes off the floor. Everything falls apart, which explains why he's 3rd in the league in plus-minus. Somehow they're the 8th seed right now. If the season ends today, they're in the playoffs, and they likely get swept. But still, they're in the playoffs, led by a 6'3" guard. Something that we have not seen since like Allen Iverson did it with Philly in 2000, 2001. A small guard lead a team with pretty much just B-, C+ role players, if that. So no Clay this year, ACL tear, or was it an Achilles this time and an ACL last year?
I think it was ACL this year and Achilles the year before. But, you know, both leg injuries kind of just sidelined the Warriors' second best player for 2 straight years. So
that's awful. Both long rehabs too, and like you said, Draymond, I think he missed the first 5 games of the year, 4 out of 5 of the year, and yes, he's solid, but he's averaging 5.5 points a game. So it's not like you're gonna count on him to get you even double-digit points, like Charles Barkley once said. You know, he's averaging his nice triple single. Yeah. Like, he's a solid player, but he's not anything to really write home about. So Steph Curry, number 1. That supporting cast, you know, Wiggins washed out at Minnesota, second chance in Golden State. Oubre's bounced around. Those are the 2 guys you would probably consider as the next best scorers on that team.
Rookie James Wiseman.
Rookie James Wiseman hurt a lot, so hurting out of the lineup a lot. So, yeah, you know, number 1, Steph Curry, like you said. I also, if I had to put money on it, I'd say he's probably my favorite for the rest of the season, barring injury. Obviously, you knock on wood for that. And yeah, man, that's my top 5.
Perfect.
That was tough. Are you surprised I didn't have Embiid in there, Jokic? Yeah.
No, not really. I was like, I think Jokic kind of got in there at the end for me. I think I had Giannis at 3. My top 3 originally, when I decided to just do top 3 rankings, was Steph, Joel, and then Giannis. And then I started looking more into it. I'm like, I could see Jokic being off there. I think LeBron would probably be at 6 for me. I also looked at Donovan, but his numbers don't really jump off the page. But I wouldn't be surprised if he got up there, if he starts putting up a little bit more points, because the Jazz are the best team in the NBA right now, and that just came out of nowhere. I'm thinking that maybe the way that their season ended last year just lit a fire under them, and that was. I'm not even a Jazz fan, but watching that game was so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely, man. But I'm just surprised they don't have LeBron in there at all. I know what the way he's been playing, but
it wasn't even like based off of what's been happening recently. I just think that that AD plays a bigger role than a lot of people give him credit for, and I think LeBron definitely benefits from having another. Probably, I would say AD is a top 5, at best maybe top 7 player on the team, and none of these other players have another player like that. Like Steph's next best player is Wiggins, Embiid's next best player is Simmons, who Simmons is a fantastic defender. His offense is kind of like Giannis. He can really only drive. He's not a shooter. Jokic has Murray, and like you said, he's been struggling. Giannis is Middleton. I mean, I love Middleton, but I would take AD over Middleton in heartbeat. And then Lillard's got McCollum. He's been out. So I just think based off of who they've had to play with and what they've had to do with who they've had, I think LeBron has had it a little bit easier just because of AD compared to my top 5. But like I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron won it this year anyway. The man is a perennial MVP candidate. He's been doing it for 18 years, and that's incredible.
Yep, I totally agree. Well, guys, that'll just about do it for our show. Once again, we want to thank you and thank Robin Adams for coming on the show and being a guest. That was a lot of fun getting him to talk about some Bucks and some Packers. And make sure you go follow him on @theotheradams14. Make sure you head over to our Twitter page as well at MTCOaksNapo to participate in those Make the Cut segment polls. And also, like you said, we're going to be putting up another poll here in the coming days to see who we count down next for their top 5 games of their career. Like you said, it's probably going to be my favorite segment that we do, because it's just there's so many different games you can choose for every single player, and you never know what's going to make the cut actually. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you enjoyed this, and subscribe, because you never want to be the one who misses what makes the cut.